Welcome to the Failing Up podcast. Today we're talking to Tradd Bastian from South Carolina, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what failure looks like to him, how it took a toll on his family, and how he overcame that with an amazing business, and funny stories about what he posts online. I'll tell you, Tradd's a social media expert. You don't want to miss this. Come and dive in with us.
Welcome back to the Failing Up podcast, humble lessons in life and business. I'm here with my co-host, Dusty Osglesby. Welcome back, brother.
It's good to be back. Good to be back.
Back here in the studio. We were chuckling about the content for failing, and the Failing Up podcast just never gets old.
Right.
You and I mastered our first few sessions here in the studio. We did really, really well.
Right.
And then we tried to do a webinar. And we got it done.
We did get it done. You were not on it.
I was there.
You were heard on it.
That's
so
right.
we went Facebook Live for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Huffaker and I. And my wife had coached me all the way through this. I was ready. I was prepared. It was showtime. And it went epically bad. We could not get Dave on Facebook Live. And they kept telling me to look for, I think they thought I was a complete moron because they kept telling me to look for the red blinking button.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, if there's a red blinking button, I would see that. Right? And they're like, no, it's the red blinking button.
Yeah.
All the way to the point that my bride came upstairs to point out the red blinking
button.
button.
She's texting me, and I'm texting her back. I'm like, go up there and look for this on the screen.
That's right. Yeah, y'all are like coaching me around it. Huffaker is talking on it, and so I'm holding the phone up on Facebook Live, which I think from here on out, we're just going to have Huffaker on the phone.
That's the best way to do it.
On Facebook Live. Although it was a great moment, because I don't get these very often. It was a great moment when my bride came up, and she was like, it's the red blinking light. And I just want everyone on this podcast to know that there was no red blinking light.
It was worth it.
That's it. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I think what happened there was it was like you got to the race before I did because you went and got our bibs, and then you took off running, and then I showed up and I was like, wait, I want to come along for the run, but you had my bib and they wouldn't let me in the room.
Well, you texted me like 30 seconds before, and you were like, hey, how do I get on this thing? And I'm like, why are you asking me, dude? I don't know. And so it was incredible.
Masterful.
I will say the feedback was that was the best Facebook Live people have seen.
That's right.
Entertaining.
It was real, man.
Yeah.
It was just about as real as it could get. So
I love it.
Let's not get too far in here without introducing our amazing guest, Tradd Bastian. Tradd, all the way from the amazing South Carolina still a state here in the Continental?
I believe so, yes, at least for now.
Still keeping you guys around. So take a quick minute and fill us in on who you are and why you're so amazing.
Yeah, okay. Tradd Bastian from Charleston, South Carolina. I just think that I'm real. Like, I don't try to sugarcoat anything. I don't try to BS people. I'm looking out for my clients in the real estate world, and I think that shows. And I do the best I can with what I got.
Yeah, and you had a great voice for podcast here. So
that's the first time I've heard that.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Face for radio is what they say.
Yeah,
right?
that's true. That is true.
So here on the podcast, right, like to talk about our failures and be authentic and transparent. And so Dusty and I'll do a good job holding you accountable to that. But really just like to start off with, how do you define failure? What does failure mean to you? When you think about failure, what does that look like?
I would say if I set a goal and don't achieve it, it's a failure. If I let my family down in a certain way, that's a failure. If I still play baseball, if we lose, that's a failure. At the same time, though, it's all learning opportunities. So I feel like if I'm not changing what I've failed at and learning from it, and then doing better the next time, then it's a true failure, and I'm not going forward.
Right.
Yeah, I think that, you echo a lot of what we talk about on this podcast about us using it as learning lessons, right? Making it stepping stones to be able to build a business, to be able to build better relationships, right? The key things in our life. Talk to me a little bit about, you said you play baseball and of course you got family there and business. What's a failure recently? What we like to really unpack is like, look for somewhere in your past where you were going through a really hard time and it felt like failure, and it probably was failure, right? Mm-hmm. But in hindsight, you're able to kind of look back at that situation and and see why it happened, right? You can see like, okay, at the time it was hard, but looking back now, I see had that not happened, it wouldn't have led me down this path, right? Or I wouldn't have been able to get there. Do you have anything like that?
Several. One of which is probably the biggest would be 2018. I had a small team. It's mostly me and an admin, and I did the most business that I ever done up to that point. We also sold our primary house, bought a partially burnt house that we took down to 3 exterior walls and 60% of the floor joists and rebuilt. We moved in with our in-laws, had our second child, also had 3 dogs, moved out of our in-laws into a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 dogs and 2 babies, probably sold at least 2 trucks, and flipped a house and sold my investment property.
Didn't have much going on, it sounds like.
No, it was really boring.
I would say that's that's incredible.
It's like you were playing like
That you
life bingo.
accomplished that, you
and
know
you were
what I
like
mean?
trying to hit
That's-
all the check
that's
boxes.
incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
It was incredible from a business standpoint and monetarily, but it took a toll on our family, and it was one of those things where you don't see it until you're in it.
Right.
And being in it, I was able to. I knew in the moment that it wasn't right, just because it felt like I was getting pulled at all different directions. Because I basically was a GC for my house. Like my GC was not great. So after the fact, it took a toll on our marriage, and we had to work through some stuff, and we did. My wife is here, and I love her very much. But the failure for me was not seeing it while it was happening. And then the win or the learning lesson was, okay, I can't keep doing this at this rate. I'll never have a family. They're going to leave me. I'm going to die from stress, whatever it is. So that was when I switched up and decided to switch brokerages and really focus on building out a team so I could get time back.
Right.
And that's been a journey in of itself. But that was a defining moment for me and for our family.
What was the trigger, right? What was the point where you looked up and you recognized, like, oh man? Because what I heard you just say, and I've actually experienced this earlier today, I'll maybe talk about it later, but was that you got into it too far before you realized it, right? What was the realization?
knee deep.
what was the realization? Was it one thing? Was it a multitude of things? Or how did you know, like, oh man, right? Like this isn't right.
My wife told me.
That's how most good things happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was one of those things where I was in full provider mode. And I was just like, I got to work harder. I got to do more. We have 3 mouths to feed plus 3 dogs. I mean, it just was, and all the things were going on at the same time. And it was just a lot. I mean, it was a lot. But she had kind of told me, and then she really told me, and I finally heard her.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this has got to change. And I think that one thing that I've done a better job of in the last couple years is getting her more involved with the process and having her understand what the goal is for the team so that she can buy in and understand that this is for our family while I need to set aside time for them.
Sure.
And be present for them. I still have to go to work to do all the things that we're doing.
Well, Dusty, you can help me. I'm probably going to mess it up, but there's the story of the the balls that you're juggling, right? And business being rubber, right?
Right.
It
gonna
can bounce
come back.
and
That's
then
right.
and then family being glass, right?
Yeah.
And so if you drop it, right, it
That's
could
right.
break.
That's right.
And I think we've all been there, man. It's one of the reasons that we got to this this topic, right? This podcast is that. We've got a future guest on here that has an amazing story of thinking that if I just build the business strong enough, it will provide for the family and for the financials and all the other things, right? And his story is so amazing. I'm excited for that episode to come out. I kind of said this morning as one of the ahas of this line of thought is I think early on. If I could go back and tell myself something from 10 years ago, it would be wealth is going to create money, and there's nothing wrong with the wealth, but you can get so entangled or create a life around the money that it actually robs you of your freedom, right? You build a lifestyle that now you have to maintain and grow, and you lose the freedom to kind of go and do what you will. Because I think there's this fine line, right? You talk about not seeing it until you're too far into it. you build wealth and you get a lot of money, and you think like, oh, I can go out and do things, right? I can go build houses and buy cars and create this lifestyle. Well, guess what you have to do? Right now, you got to maintain that lifestyle, right? You have to keep it going, and it becomes this prison, right, in some form or fashion, right? And you look up and go like, there's that tipping point where it's like building the wealth and everything's important. Can you have restraint at that point where you when you accomplish freedom, can you stay there, right, without pushing too far,
right?
And the alternative to that being, if you don't push yourself, do you become complacent? Right? Do you stop growing? Do you stop developing? Are you not now doing things that would enrich other people's lives? Right. I think that's the balance that we're looking for, right?
Well, and I think too, when I heard you talking there, Tradd, what I thought was, I'm 100% confident that all three of us have had that exact same experience, probably just in different ways, right? Like I'm literally sitting here thinking, my bride this week came to me and said, hey, like, this is like, you're not seeing this. And I've said this lovingly, calmly, a few times, and you didn't hear me. And I think you talked about, we talk about accountability a lot on here, right? And that's, to me, that's accountability 101. And as I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking all three of us have done that exact same thing, right? All of a sudden, we're this far in, and we go, man, I didn't even know I was here. And our brides go, yeah, well, I told you 3 times you were here. Right. Right. I said it this way, and then I said it this way, and so we talk a lot that I know as men anyway, right? Telling sometimes is one thing, and then showing sometimes is another thing, right? Like, hey, I've told you, now I'm going to show you. And then the other thought I had, David, as you're talking about as men, right? I think one of the things you said, Tradd, was providing, right? You were in provider mode. And I know all three of us I feel this weight, right, every day when I get up of providing at a certain level, right? And it's all defined differently. Yep. And one of the things that my bride has helped teach me is that providing is much deeper than financial provision, right? Sure. That we've got to provide consistency, and we've got to provide a growth environment and a love environment, and be purposeful, right? Like and to your point, Dave, what are we providing for if we're not providing that inside of our home, right?
Well, it's our job to set the example, and all of those examples can be set without necessarily anything that has to do with what we associate with providing, right? Just knowing us three, you're going to go provide for food on the table and a shelter over their head and clothes on their back and a multitude of shoes, I'm sure, at the Oglesby house.
And at the Bastian house.
Tradd, I don't know if you know, but I think your bride wants a few more shoes.
She does.
Yeah. Okay. They do go with the outfit for the record.
That's it. Yeah. Don't let her down, Tradd. Come on. All right. So you're also amazing at social media, right? I know you got this tag, right? This nickname that all of a sudden you were God's gift to TikTok. Is that what they call you?
The king of TikTok.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Come on now.
It's close.
The only thing I can say about it is I just am authentic with it. I saw trolls giving agents crap, and I came back and fed it back to them, and the agents loved it, so I just kept doing it.
So what does that look like? For someone on our show, like they're listening, they're under a rock, they don't know who you are.
For sure. Right? So let's say you make a video talking about how the market is shifting and trying to teach someone how to navigate that in whatever shape, form, or fashion. And then some faceless, nameless account comes and starts giving you crap about it. I just make a video and tell them how they're wrong.
All right.
And the intent of it for me was, one, it's funny. It's a good way to vent, just because, you're talking into the ether. Nobody's really there. Right. And the other aspect is you're developing that relationship with that agent that you just basically came to bat
for.
Exactly.
Right. You just stood up for.
Exactly. And they didn't ask me to. And they can tell me to stop, and I will. But it's usually funny, lighthearted, and a little bit of a dig.
What was your one today? I saw on there someone had asked if you were happy with your cleaning service, and you said no, they don't get the blood out.
Yeah, so I do a Tradd sarcastic text every so often, like, because I mean, I'm sure, I don't know about y'all, but I get tons of texts from healthcare and now cleaning services randomly. So the cleaner at the service asked if I was happy with my cleaning service. I was like, no, man, they can never get all the blood out. If y'all got a great product for cleaning out blood, please call me. And then
No subject off limits, right?
And on Instagram, I put let the bodies hit the floor. I thought it was great.
That is.
I didn't get as much traction as I was hoping. I thought it was really funny, though.
I like the wit. Yeah, no, and so I'm sure you didn't start out doing it that way, right? You were able to, you've actually turned it into a pretty good, I mean, you were on stage on a panel at Family Reunion at Keller Williams.
I'm still waiting for them to uninvite me for the language that I use sometimes.
I got a call about that earlier, so no, I'm kidding. No, so I mean,
I'm doing good so far, though.
You're doing great, man. And failing your way forward with it. How have you built a business around that?
Well, so that kind of came in after the fact. The business was really built off of my database and growing my sphere, and then this was an ancillary deal. When I moved over to Keller Williams, I went for the referrals, and I was like, either I'm going to make money off this or I'm going to go back to the brokerage I was at because it worked fine. And there was other reasons too, but that was a big factor. And so once I started succeeding with that, then I was looking for other ways to drive more traffic to the referral business, and this is one of them. It hadn't panned out as much as I'd like, but it's starting, and it's slow, and it's a slow roll. Sure. I mean, and none of the things that I do are quick and fast money. Like, it's all going to take time, but you just layer them on. And so, I mean, I've got people that just call me and say, "Hey, so and so told me to call you because you're in Charleston. You're the best agent there." I was like, that's right.
There you go.
That's right. That's right.
Go watch my TikTok. Well,
That's right.
I would think even with you talk about your database, I would think even with your database, these types of things, they want to see it too, right?
Yep.
So it's not, you're staying in front of them, right? We always talk about you got to stay in front of your people even when you're not in front of your people. And the best way to do that is from a social media standpoint. So they're going to watch these same things that everybody else is watching.
Well, and it's funny. So I was just at a friend of mine's birthday party 2 weeks ago, and there was probably 4 or 5 of my clients there, and then a handful of people that I knew from high school that I hadn't really talked to in a while. And they're like, "Man, when are you going to do truck time with Tradd again?" I was like, "Y'all watch that?" And they're like, "Yeah, you haven't done it in like months." I was like, kind of fell off there a little bit. I'm gonna have to get back. And that next week, I did a truck time with Tradd, and they're like eating it up. And it's, I mean, it's TikTok is more directly targeting agents because to be honest, I'm not smart enough to figure out how the algorithms and everything to target clients, so agents are easy,
right?
So I target them there. But Instagram and Facebook, a lot, if not all, of my clientele are there, and I engage with them. And to your point, I don't. A lot of them don't answer my phone calls,
right?
But you can send them a direct message, and they'll talk to you for hours.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I know. And I learned that early on. I had a guy that was I went to high school with. We weren't like best buddies by any means, but I saw him at a wedding. He goes, "Man, you're killing it in real estate." I was like, "I hadn't sold anything in 3 months." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm killing it in real estate. It's great. It's great. It's great." And then next year, another wedding, he goes, "Man, you were really killing it in real estate." I was like, "Yeah, I kind of caught my stride. I was doing at least 1 or 2 a month." I was like, "Yeah, man, it's going really well." And then next year, he calls me up. He goes, "Hey, man, I want to list my lot with you." And then he sent me his sister, who sent me her friend, who sent me his girlfriend, who sent me his friend. I mean, it just, and I'm working with one right now, getting ready to sell his house. That's from that was like, I don't know, 10 years ago.
Right.
So
from
it perpetuates.
That one relationship.
Exactly.
From that one
Isn't
relationship.
that the beauty of real estate, right? I mean, if you will put the work in early on and you do a good job, which I think most agents do a pretty good job, right? Yeah. And you will get the referrals, right? You will build the business. But the downside of real estate is that it's a long play. It's all a long play. You can go out and hustle and find the now business in short spurts, but the amount of time and energy it takes to do that is not sustainable over a career.
That's right.
And so getting people to understand, like, do what you have to in the short term to survive, but build the business for the long term, right? Focus on the 85% of people not moving, and you'll never have to prospect again. Right?
That's exactly right.
Well, it's also a money thing. Like, I have a hard time, and I'm learning that I need to spend more money on marketing, but I was running like 90% profitability for several years because I'd spent no money on marketing. Sure. All my money went towards my baseball league and sponsorships. Yep. And so it was hard. And as I build the team out, I understand I'm going to have to add more value for the team and the members. And so the leads will be part of that. But I mean, I think my value is really from, hey, let me show you how to deepen your relationships in your database. It may not pay off today, and I'll give you these leads to supplement you. But that is going to be my gift to you 5 years from now, because you're going to be building on that, and you're going to have people calling you, and you don't need to buy leads anymore.
That's right.
As a broker, that's probably the biggest mistake I see our agents making is they start having success in real estate, and they don't go and reinvest that money into building a business. And so when you take that money home and it becomes your lifestyle, and then your level of living grows to a certain level. And then in order to grow, you now need to follow the model and go and invest some expenses. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, you have to go to your spouse or to your family and go, hey, by the way, I need some of this lifestyle back in order to go grow the business. Right. And there's ways to navigate through it. But I think like that's one of the early stepping stones you see in kind of years 0 through 5 of people building a successful business is they didn't anticipate. Right? We try to teach, like, always go and take that 30%, even if it's your first deal, and you can take that 30% for expenses. Let's go ahead and set that aside, and let's just let that build, right? Let that go. All right, Tradd, I know we're running out of time here. I'd like to ask all of our guests just to think about, 1 million years from now with the advancements in medical capabilities, or however long it is, you're at the end and you're looking back, and what are you hoping, or what do you anticipate could be your biggest regret?
Oh man, I would say not imparting what wisdom I have to my children. I feel like I love my parents, and I know that this is not a dig on them by any means, but I feel like there was a lot of things that they could have probably taught me, and maybe I wasn't receptive to it. I don't know. But
as your coach, I'm gonna back them up a little bit. No, I'm kidding, totally kidding.
But I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, I can't remember what I was watching something the other day, and it was talking about how there's so many things that need to be taught in school that aren't, and financials is a big part of that. But outside of the money piece is just like, there's so many different ways of doing life. No one way is the right way. It's whatever you feel is right. And yes, there's a certain amount that you have to make a certain amount of money to live a life. But your life and my life and their lives are going to be different, and whatever they feel is comfortable is whatever they feel is comfortable. They don't need to make $1 million for me to think they're a success. They just need to be happy. So if I'm not teaching them how to do that in the ways I know how, and then making sure that they're still asking questions and not just taking my word for, gospel, then I've done a great job. And I can die happy, and hopefully somebody else is wiping my butt.
Yeah, hopefully, right. Well, and I think as you say that, the intentionality around it, right? As we're trying to help this be a learning lesson for our listeners about failure and the paths that we've taken, the question you have to ask yourself is, how are you being intentional right now to prevent that from happening, right? If that's your awareness, right? God's put that on your heart for a reason. There's a book out there called The Intentional Father, and I think as leaders, as parents, right? It's funny, we're talking about how this turns into a parent podcast almost every time, because I think that's where we see a lot of our failures show up. But as parents, have we written a business plan, if you will, right, for those kids, or are we just being very entrepreneurial in the way that we're raising our children, right? Or have we written down a plan? Have we studied that? Have we thought about, how do I want to be intentional about causing this? Right. So I think I'm guilty of it, right? A lot of us, we're being parents and leading, just shooting from the hip, right? We haven't actually thought out or written out a plan on what we're trying to accomplish. So maybe that's something you work on, right? Maybe you go and think about a plan on how do you reverse engineer, so that, when your kids look at you and they're 25, they're like, man, Dad, you did such a great job of helping us understand the wisdom that you've got in the world, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because my wife and I were talking about this at lunch today. And, you and I have talked about going cross country and RV and all that kind of stuff. And we're trying to figure out how we can do that, but also homeschool the kids out of the RV and go to like different national parks and stuff like that. And then potentially take it out of the country. Yeah. So we haven't built it, but the idea is there. And they're, almost 5 and 6 now. So we still have a little bit of time, but it's going to catch up to us quick. So we're trying to put the wheels in motion to make it work. So it can be, I want to give them more experiences than I want to give them crap.
Yeah, 100%. And you and I were, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, right? The being there and being present. And that's what you guys that's what you're talking about doing. How do we be more present? How to be more intentional? It goes back to the provision conversation we had earlier, there is a financial piece of provision, but I think when we get to the end, I don't think our kids are going to go, Dad made a lot of money. Right? I think they're going to go, you remember when we loaded up?
Yeah.
And spent 2 years on the road? You remember that? They'll remember that, the experience piece,
100%,
right?
100%.
That'll never go anywhere. That's the provision piece, right?
Brother, we're so grateful that you're here. Thank you for sharing some time with us.
Thank
Tradd
you.
Bastian out of South Carolina. Just so happy to have you, man. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Great beard. Great beard.
Thank you, sir.